listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Hello everyone. Today I have my friend Josh here. He is an intuitive tarot reader and also a practicing witch. He has read tarot for around 3 years and reads every week at Hummingbird Apothecary in Knoxville. He uses tarot to help give clarity and to guide others and himself in whatever matter they need. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming out. So we just did a little reading for me right beforehand. So I just I guess all these questions I had just kind of got answered, but I'll continue to ask them. So for others that didn't get to see the spread. So I guess my first question will be, how do you incorporate Oracle and the Lenormand into your readings?
So when I do readings, I start with a full tarot reading, however long it takes, and then I'll pull 3 or 4 Lenormand cards, or however we want to pronounce it. Do those so it kind of tells a story, and then I pull out the Oracle cards. Sometimes I use 2 decks, sometimes it's 1, and I let them pull their own. So I'll say pull however many you want. Normally it's 3 or 4. I go through them to give them a little bit of full spectrum guidance after the reading.
Okay. Okay, so you use different spreads each time, or the same, or does it sort of change with the client?
It normally changes with the person. I kind of use spreads intuitively, so I'll just start pulling cards and lay them down however it feels right.
Okay. Yeah, I really noticed, because I'm I guess very basic at all of this, because it gets a little overwhelming. I'm studying astrology and reading all these theosophy books. I mean, I don't know. I'm into so many things that I am not very great at. I'm just okay.
You have to start somewhere.
Right. So I do 3 card spreads, past, present, future. But as you were doing it, I noticed that you didn't get so caught up on each individual card. You're this. But it really was a story versus when I do my 3 card spread, I'm really over analyzing what that one card means. But I kind of liked the movement of how you were doing it, and it was just so clear. To me it was better than me having to look up what does the 3 coins to the left mean.
And that's where you really have to start, though, is learning the meanings, and then you kind of go into it from there, and you can build up better spreads for yourself and get deeper into it.
Right.
But I will say sometimes, depending if they have a set question they want me to read on, then I'll pull out 3 or 4 and then put little ones in between to be the bridge to kind of give more clarity onto the topic they're asking about.
Right. So sometimes it's totally different numbers, or so if you're if you did mine at the end, had we not came to a good conclusion, would you have
I would have gotten the clarity that you needed.
Right. Okay, so that's so cool.
I did one reading one time that was an hour and a half long for somebody.
Wow.
It was a lot, but it was
your
good.
whole deck,
pretty much.
That's cool, because sometimes I get sad at the cards I'm not using. I did a spread. My friend just asked me. I'm not a professional, but if someone asks me, I'm okay, I'll lay them out and I'll send you what the book says. I'm not good at.
Sometimes it helps them understand a little bit better, because
right.
everyone's minds work differently.
Exactly. But I don't even know where I'm going with this. But yeah, I'm not as great at it, but I'm dabbling. I do the mystical shaman oracle deck and ascended master deck, and I do some tarot. I feel with tarot, sometimes I'll just pull 1 card, but every time I do a tarot reading for myself, it is the devil, death, and I know that they're not negative cards, but it's just why can't I get something pretty? And then I did this spread for my friend the other day, and all of them were upright. And it was holy, and there was the sun was out, and every card, and I was this is so nice, and then I do mine, and it's upside down, which we just went into. There was a point in the story where I had 6 upside down cards all at once, which, I feel some of those cards upside down are good. Yeah. The chaotic cards upside down actually tend to represent.
And I find there's no real negative energy to any of the cards.
Right.
It's just trying to teach you something about yourself you haven't realized or that you're putting off, a cycle that needs to be ended.
Right.
Because with the devil, a lot of times when I read it for people, it's there's a person or situation or even yourself that's holding you back and putting you in that
Right.
bondage that the card represents.
Right.
So you have to acknowledge it so you can release it.
Exactly, because we're not just like perfect beings. Like
Right.
we wouldn't be here, right,
We're
if
all
we were
flawed.
perfect.
That's what makes us humans.
Yeah, and I think stuff like astrology and just the tarot, it just like helps you get a deeper glimpse into those like patterns, And the thing is, like when I do it, like if I do them too close together, I end up getting like the same reading.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I'm like, okay, I obviously haven't fixed whatever that was, So I think sometimes we'll like reshuffle, and we're like, that wasn't good, I'm gonna redo it. And then it's like the same thing. Even if it's different cards, you're like, okay, I hear you.
It's like it's time to listen.
Yes, yes. So how is the Lenormand different and similar to the Rider-Waite cards?
So I'm not too well versed on Lenormand. While I do use them, I use them intuitively. But from what I've read about them, it kind of gives you a more direct story. So where tarot can kind of branch off, go into different topics, Lenormand's kind of like, this is what's going on, this is what you need to work on, and this is where you're going.
Right. So did you study the Rider-Waite a little bit first and then go into Lenormand, or did you start the other way?
So I started with actually someone I was dating at the time got me into reading because he was like, I think you might be good at this. So I started with the Rider-Waite deck. I had the inverted one, so it was black and white. I would read by the book. It never really worked well for me. Like, it got the point across, but it wasn't deep enough, if that makes sense.
Right.
So then I bought myself a Lenormand deck thinking it was a tarot deck. It was not.
Okay.
So I kind of put it away for a while. And then recently, in the last few months or so, I pulled it back out because it kind of called out to me. Like, I moved recently, and I kept seeing it around my house in different places, and I was like, how did it get there?
Right.
I guess that means I need to, like, pick it up and work with it a little bit.
Right, it's calling you. Yeah, I noticed some of the cards seemed very similar, like the major... Is it the major arcana? Is that the word?
Arcana, yeah.
Yeah,
Arcana.
okay. So, like, judgment and stuff like that was still in there. But it had different pictures. But I don't know, like, it still had the vibe to me of, like, the overall placement of like the center, and then there's like the story around, but it had the skeleton. Do they all have like the skeletons?
So my deck, the Marigold Tarot, was made out of India, I believe.
Okay.
So the artists used local flowers, flora and fauna, but then also every person or being in it is a skeleton,
right,
kind of representing the beauty of death, but then also the beauty from life,
right,
when with like the flowers and the animals,
right, because we're like always got a skeleton within us, like
right.
even when we're alive. So
we're all just skeletons in a flesh suit.
Exactly. Okay, awesome. So how do you go about giving bad news to people when the reading doesn't come out how the person hoped? How do you...
The one thing I tell most people, even before I read sometimes, is I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear. So when it comes up with something that might seem negative to them, I'll pull a few more cards to give them clarity, to be like, this isn't as bad as it seems.
Right.
It's just something you have to work on, something that we always have to work on things in our lives. There's no end to the cycle of change or working on ourselves. It's just a matter of how you go about doing it.
Right.
Are you going to do it progressively, where you're actually working on it, or are you going to keep like putting it in the back of your mind for a while?
Do those people, like, when they've had kind of a harsher reading, and it's not harsh, but like sometimes people really don't like to be like critiqued, even if it's like stuff. Even if it's astrology. Like I read my husband's Chiron stuff to him last night, and I read my own too, and it's hard to hear it, but I'm like wondering, like, if they were to get like a rougher reading, like would they try to come back, like, do they usually come back to you and like have another reading in a day or so? Or
I have some friends from my school who come every week or so to get a reading.
Okay.
And some of them are a little hard. I've made a few of my friends cry just because it was so intense for them. But they were also like, that was a release that I needed. I needed to hear that.
Right.
So they never really get like mad or upset about it. They're just like, that sucks, but I really did need to hear it.
Right. Yeah. I made this guy cry one time by accident. Like, and not, like I said, I'm not great with cards, but I have been playing with like different decks for a while.
Yeah,
like
and having fun is the most important, honestly, when you start.
Right.
Because otherwise it becomes like a task.
Right. It's like a job. But I was using Caroline Mace's archetype cards, and you really only use them one time, like in your life. And there's a wheel, which I found out later that it's exactly the same as the astrological wheel. So you go through the whole deck, and there's all these different archetypes, and you pull eight of them that you identify with. So like the mother, or like the poet or whatever. And then there's four that we all had, which is like the saboteur. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but like where we self-sabotage basically. The inner child, the prostitute, which is where we like sell ourselves for whatever reason, and stuff like that. So this guy like had all these good things about himself, but then like the sabotage like landed in his like family, like, and then he's like started crying, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like I felt kind of bad. I'm like, this is just like you needed to hear it,
Right.
like, but I feel like if you're moved to tears about something, then you really recognize like, oh my gosh, like maybe I haven't been putting enough of my energy there, or
Right.
spending enough time working on those aspects. So, but yeah, like making people cry is like the worst for me. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this?
You just gotta give them that like reassuring push of like, it sucks right now, but
Right.
once you can take what you've learned and work on it, then this will be a whole phase of your life that you can look back on and be like, wow, look how far I've come.
Exactly. Like really see the growth.
hmm
So, do you like document your spreads each time, or do you just like move on?
I normally just move on. Sometimes if it's a reading for myself, my boss actually gave me this book called a tarot tracker. So
Okay.
if it's something that really stood out to me for my own reading, I'll write it down or in my grimoire. So I
Okay.
can look back in like a few months, a few weeks, however long, and be like, oh, I've worked on this, or I need to
Right.
keep working on this
Or
if I
like
forget
this,
about it.
see like, did I have this card?
Right, because I always get either like the Empress in my spreads, or
Uh-huh.
like, oh, what's the other one? The High Priestess.
Okay.
So a lot of divine feminine energy,
Right.
because I kind of lean more on the feminine side,
Uh-huh.
energy wise.
Right.
So they always come up just reminding me of like who I am and what I'm working for.
Right. I feel like the high priestess and empress are almost like the yin and yang too, or like
hmm
the light and dark. So they're
Right.
they're similar, but they're like the other aspects of each other.
Right.
So I don't know. The last time I pulled the empress, I got pregnant. So I'm like, I don't want that card. She's beautiful though, but like the fertility, of
Right.
that card. So
And
I
like,
like really, it was literal for me.
right. And like I resonate a lot with that. Like I have the goddess Artemis tattooed on me.
Oh, I love
I do
Artemis.
too. And then I realized I got this one a couple years before, but it kind of represents a divine masculine, divine feminine, but on the
Right.
opposite sides of the body of where they align.
Right. Okay. So that's like really connecting
hmm
and crossing.
Yeah, so like blurring the lines, kind
Right.
of.
I got this tattoo recently, and you can't see it, but it's Cat Stevens artwork, but it's like
hmm
this old mountain man, and I was like studying like the yin and yang aspects of the body, and I was like, okay, so he's masculine, he's on the right, and I was like, I want to do something prettier
Yeah.
on my left side and really like represent that. So you had the same
But I didn't
idea.
even know it until like after I got this one done. Someone at my work was like, "Oh hey, masculine, feminine." I was like, "Oh, cool,
Right, like I'm glad that worked out.
crazy
Yeah.
coincidence."
Yeah, when I was 18, like the day I turned 18, I went and got a tattoo.
Same.
Yeah. Okay, cute. And I got a compass on my right foot. I got it, sort of just like to represent, the different directions like in the journey. Didn't really think too much about it. I'm 18. And like years later, I was like reading about the Buddha, and like one of the stories was saying that he was born with a compass birthmark on the bottom of his right foot. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so beautiful. Like, and it's not like I was thinking about it, but I do feel like, I don't know, I've been studying like simultaneous time a lot, and like
hmm
how like our future and past selves really are still like they still kind of exist. So like even when I was 18, like I didn't know that yet, but my future self knew that,
Yeah.
and it was like I was like grateful. I was like that I didn't get something like Garfield or something. Not that I would ever do that, but you know what I mean? Like some people, like if they were to get a tattoo at 18, it would be like,
Right.
you know.
Like I try to be conscious and get something small, and then now I'm covered in tattoos.
Right, I know. I would love to get more, but I don't actually like the pain. Like I, I psyched myself out last time because it had been a long time since I
hmm
got the other one, and I'm like kind of a wimp when like my fat gets pinched, and so I was like looking up all these ways to numb it and all. Like I did all this stuff. Like I went out to eat beforehand. I had all this like wrap on me where I'd like put this cream on my arm, and I mean it might have worked, but it still really hurt. And luckily, I used all of my hypnobirthing techniques, and I was like, just like the whole time, like so I was screaming inside, but like I was trying to not allow my nervous system to respond to it, because that's when like I really feel pain. That's when I'm like clenched.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really want to get a Totoro on my hip
That'd be
so
so
bad.
cute.
But then it was like the other really bad place to get one. Like every time I'm like, I want to get a tattoo there, and I read and it's like in the red. I'm like, why is like that the only places?
I will say, like, I have a pretty high pain tolerance. Like, I have tons of piercings and everything, but I also
Uh-huh.
use getting tattoos as kind of a spiritual experience and a way of releasing.
Right, like
So you take
honoring
the
the
pain, you
pain.
feel the pain, but you release anything you're holding on to. Or you kind of disconnect yourself from the pain to let your body experience it.
Right. I kind of like one of my friends threw that idea out there like right beforehand, and I was like, okay, that's a good way to look at it. Like afterwards, I was like, oh, I get that. But during, it's different, like when you're
Yeah.
actually like suffering, it's like I had a hard time like thinking, oh, thank you, universe, for
Right, like, this hurts.
self and pain affecting. So yeah, so I don't know. Um, let's see. So you're also a practicing witch. So obviously, a lot of witches tend to use oracle and tarot and stuff as, part of their ritual. Are there any other rituals that you do pretty regularly?
Let's see. So I'm a Leo, so I love fire. So I have a lot of candles on my altar space at home, and I
Okay.
love using fire in a way of trying to work with it to move it with your own energy, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of grounds me in a way. So like sometimes I'm going to do a reading for myself or a spell or something, I'll just play with fire for a little bit
Right.
because it kind of connects me to my own energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's a pretty regular ritual that I would do. And also, like, it's not really a ritual, but incense in itself kind of sets that like web of magic throughout my space, and I just
Right.
love burning it.
Right. And if you like watch incense like over time, like in
Right.
like the direction it really
Right.
is like affecting the
And like
space.
I find like when I burn it at work or wherever, if there's someone who is going through a hard time or something, the incense will kind of follow them and the smoke will cleanse them in a way. And like what
Yeah.
is going on? I'm like, oh, you needed that.
Right. I'm always like that. Like if there's like a circle of us and we're sitting around the fire and
hmm
like all the smoke, like every time I move, the smoke will like be in my eyes. I'm like, okay, what are you trying to tell me
hmm
right now? Because I do like I don't know. I feel really tuned into elements,
hmm
and yeah, I'm like really aware of stuff like that. Where other people are just sort of laughing about it, and
Right,
I'm
but it's
like,
like everything has a purpose.
right, exactly. I think it's interesting. I've been studying astrology, and like so there's like three fire signs, and I'm in Aries, and it's talking about like the last thing I was studying was like Aries are the fire starter,
hmm
and Leo is like the fire that's going. And so it's interesting when you said you light the candle and sort of let it go,
hmm
versus like when I do mine, I light it and start. So like that's
Yeah.
just like a weird observation that I noticed.
One
Like,
thing you can try that I learned a few years ago just from like playing around with it myself is put your hand on one side of the flame, envision and kind of focus on it moving towards your hand and watch it do it
right,
because it will.
right. It's like proves the interconnectedness,
Right.
and that's the whole thing. Like with, oh yeah, I just brought this up yesterday, so y'all are gonna like be getting sick of me talking about this, but Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I love Avatar.
I love it so much. Like I think about it in my life
My cat's name
often.
is Yue because
Oh,
she's white and looks like the moon.
yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. But yeah, like just the concept of, element bending.
Right.
Like after I watched the show, I like looked up videos of people doing stuff. And like there really was this guy, and like I mean, he didn't make big ripples, but like
Right.
he was doing like the moves
It's all
and
about energy work.
right. And that's like with fire, I feel like it's one of the more obvious ones,
Right.
because it's like going, like you're not like creating the fire, you're like
Right.
moving it once it's already started. But with water, like it's, I don't know, I feel like it takes longer to get like in
hmm
tune with it.
Because water kind of flows how it wants, you know?
Right. It's
Like with
not as
fire, winds and everything can control it. But then water, you're just like, well, it's a give and take, push and pull kind of thing.
right, right. Yeah, I like to tell people I'm a professional bubble dancer, and like most people when they like make bubbles are just thinking of like, oh, when you're a kid and like blowing bubble. But I'm like thinking about like the water in the bubble
hmm
mixture and like the air, that I
Right.
have to catch. But I don't know, I kind of feel like a bender when I'm doing it, because like I really am. And I've used my intention, like if I imagine the bubble is going to be huge, like if I really
Right.
focus and like I'll stare like into it, I swear it can like make it go really far. But this is also me feel it's like a wave, you know, like guys that are surfing, they're like, oh, that's not a good wave, so I'm gonna wait. So I want to make bubbles. The reason I'm like really good, people are like, oh, is that good? It's because I'm reading the elements. So I'm like, okay, here we go. This is the gust. And like I hold out for that sometimes to get the big
Yeah.
bubble. But I think there's like a lot of magic there, you know, and it's silly, but it's because of the elements involved.
But also that like childlike magic in a sense is like the
Yes.
most important thing anyone can do. Like connecting with your inner child, healing it so you can still live in that childlike state of wonder.
Right. Right.
Which some people might frown upon because it's like, oh, ignorance is bliss, but there's
Right.
so much knowledge in being able to see the world clearly.
Right. And just like studying, like really like focusing on these things that just kind of come and go, but like giving them the attention. And so
Right.
like, okay, I blew a bubble and I move on. But I didn't just do that. I was like, I want to like kind of look into this more and like create like my wands. Like I imagine them being actual wands. You know, I wrapped them like they're like hickory. You know,
Yeah.
like I wrapped them with like whatever colors I wanted and so I don't know. Like to me, it's kind of a ritual. But I feel like people they either love it or they're like, oh God, here she goes.
Well,
with
I
her,
love it.
yeah, with her bubbling. You know, so it's really fun. You'll have to,
I definitely will try it.
yeah, like play with them someday. Like doing it at the lake is the best thing ever because you know, there's like lots of gusts of wind. And when you make a giant bubble and close it and it goes out into the water, it does not pop because of the water. So it bounces. And like, there was one night where we were all out there really late and I just kept making bubbles. And when there's no sun, there's really nothing to pop on. Like, the sun is basically going to evaporate the liquid. So, like, there was like 30 giant bubbles just in the middle of the lake. There's like this guy on a boat just like driving through. And I'm just like looking around. And I always get people and they're like, "Flip," you know, like cheering me on. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, if I was on the water looking, you know, and like, where are these coming from, you know? Like, but I can get quite a few going, you know, so it's really cool. So, are there any like specific holidays that you observe or celebrate?
I normally follow the Sabbaths. So
Okay.
like Yule, Ostera, Samhain. And Samhain's actually coming up.
Right.
And I'm trying, me and my boss are talking about having a little Samhain festival or like potluck
Okay.
thing at our work.
Okay, so a hummingbird.
And then having like a little altar space to honor the past loved ones because it is the like one of the thinnest points between the veil.
Right.
So it's a great way to connect with your past loved ones, your spirit guides, whoever.
Right. This is like the whole concept of like Coco with the ofrenda. Like, so you just call it an altar. Is that like the same word? Is that just like a different language for you think or?
I think so. I honestly haven't seen Coco. I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh, you would love it.
And now I've heard so many good things about it.
Right. It really is, you know, good. I guess it's good for like children, you know, because I'll talk about it sometimes. Like I'll plant like marigolds around that time. So like the petals, you know, are like guiding the loved ones back. It's
Yeah.
like the bridge. And it was the first movie I ever took my son to see in theaters.
Aw.
And I literally cried for like 20 minutes after the movie because it was just so beautiful. And like, you don't expect all this like spirituality in Disney movies, but they are like, it's there now. You
Oh,
know, like
definitely
Moana
is.
was very spiritual.
Right. She was literally connected to the ocean.
Right. And like her grandmother, like if I could pick any Disney character that I related to, it would be her grandmother. And like she like turns into the, you know, stingray and like guides her. So then that's that whole like animal totem. And
Right.
I don't know. I just feel like they're doing a really good job, which some people hate it, you know, and they're like, I will not let
They
my
just hate it
children.
because they don't understand.
Right.
And society's formed this like religious boundary.
Of yeah, like if it's not to the book, like if it's not exactly, you know, based on like something the Bible would say, it's like
Right.
it's bad. And I just don't understand like the controlling aspects of some of the faiths. Like I dabble in all of them. Like people have like I don't know if it's classified me as a witch. I don't know what it is, but I've been called a witch before, and it's not like I don't take it derogatory,
Yeah.
but like I just don't. I dabble in so many things that I'm like I don't even know what to call it, you know?
Right.
Because
That's
like
kind of where I'm at too. Because like I
Right.
grew up in a Christian school for like 11 years.
right, so
Very
like you have
conservative
these
Christian household.
archetypes, right?
Yeah.
Like even though I'm not, you know, not like focused just on Christianity in my path, I still like as I study archetypes, I'll like think about random saints and,
Right.
because
Because
like
like
that
every
was,
religion has validity to it.
right. Like, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. So, like, I have a hard time relating to people who are just like completely closed off to
Right.
the fact that there are other cultures out there
Right.
and that like they have their own beliefs. And like, I just don't love the idea of like going out and like converting people. And I'm like, let them
It's
be.
so
Like,
harmful.
it really is. It's like, like that's our beliefs are like our core, and for a lot of people, like that's everything to them. So like to
Right.
go and to like convert and like dominate
And
and
just kind
say,
of take that out from them.
right,
It's
and
like it's
it's
who they are.
right, like, oh, you want some food? Like, well, sorry, you're gonna have to like give up your,
Right.
so like that. And any religion, like there's a lot of religions that do that, like that want to convert and stuff. And I'm just like, it's not the religion I have a thing against. It's just like that concept
Right.
of taking other people's gods away.
Because like not everyone who practices like Christianity or Islam, whatever it may be,
Right.
isn't the same.
They're totally like all these different
Right.
branches, and like they argue amongst themselves. Like, so, like even in the Christian community, you got like Baptists and like Methodists, like so. Like if like they're not even agreeing amongst themselves, so it's like I'm not going to take it personally that they're not going to agree with
Right.
me because like they don't even agree with their fellow
Right.
Christians a lot of times. So it's just like, okay, that's cool. I just sort of roll with it.
And that's all you really can do. Because
Right.
the more you kind of like stir the pot and try to get them to understand you, the more they don't want to.
Right.
It's like that's fine, but like my belief system is let people do what they want as long as it's not harming themselves or others.
Right. That's like one of my favorite aspects of like paganism
Mm.
and like the craft is this idea that we create our own.
Right.
So like we might share rituals. Like I think that's why people think, "Oh, she's a witch." It's because I share so many rituals. I do
Mm-hmm.
like I like oracle stuff. I'm like into astrology. I love crystals. So yeah, I could see what like where they're getting the label from, but I don't know. There's just so much out there in like all
Right.
of these ways to explore like this inner life,
Right. And I feel like, especially now with like social media and everything, people want to just label you as a witch.
Right.
But it's like there's so much more. It's just spiritualism.
Exactly. So I guess if I had to pick a label, I would probably go more with pagan because like I just like my rituals change all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like I do like have new moon and full moon things that's pretty constant for me, that I honor those, but I don't know, like I kind of am not great with anything like doing it regularly. So I guess that's why I don't want to be like, oh, I'm into witchcraft because like I'm not disciplined enough to
Well, and that's
like
the thing is like a lot of people make it seem like you have to follow this set calendar of
right,
things, but also like witchcraft for me is more like you're connecting with yourself and magic. You
right,
don't have to meet anyone's guidelines. Because
right,
like I'll have days where I'm in a depressive episode or something, I don't want to do anything.
right,
But then other days I'm like, oh yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. Just
yeah,
kind of do it when you need to and when you feel like you should.
right, because it's there. I feel like to help kind of pull you out of those ruts, to
Right.
heal. There's healing there, like
Right.
that's the magic
And
part
like
of
we
it.
all are magic. We have magic in our blood.
Right. Yeah, I think that like I don't know. How would you explain magic to people, that are only thinking Harry Potter? Like I
Right.
think people and I love Harry Potter. Like don't get me wrong, but like I think that like they get so caught up on like actually like manifesting something right away and
Right.
it's
Like the
like shows up right in
stereotypes for
front of
it.
you. Yeah, like that. But like how do you describe like everyday magic?
Everyday magic kind of comes through every little thing you do, whether it's how you sweep your floor, you close your door, the food you make. It's all about intention.
Mhm.
But it's also that deep divine connection to yourself, your higher self, and the earth, and the magics that are around it and in it.
Right.
Because I mean, the breeze is magic.
Right.
You can hear things. You can talk to people through the breeze.
Uh-huh.
The earth itself, when the stars come out at night, that's magic.
Right.
You're getting that energy from beyond our plane.
Mhm.
It's literally just everything.
Right, and it's
And it's just about how aware you are of it.
right, that's the thing is it's always there whether you believe in it or not. But like once you start to open yourself up, you start getting messages in all of these forms.
Right.
It's not just finding a feather, it's all sorts of stuff. Like
Right.
it's spilling your coffee and then being like, "Oh wow, like I had to stop and pause." Like, like finding like little messages and it's almost like coming from your higher self.
Right.
And it's like you needed to pause or you didn't need to leave right then or you needed to be more present or
Mhm.
whatever. But yeah, it's like based on like how you perceive it. So like the more open you are, I feel like, to getting messages and like tuning
Right.
in, the more you're gonna see.
Because your spirit guides, deities, whatever, whoever it may be that you believe in, is just there to help you and guide you and show you what you need to know.
Right.
The more closed off you are, the harder it's going to be.
Right.
When you take that time to be like, I'm opening myself up. I
Right.
want to be aware. I want to know. Then it can start to come in.
Right. And just like allow yourself to receive
Mm-hmm.
the messages, and I feel like sometimes it takes it might take a couple of days.
Right.
Like something happens, I might not see the beauty in that moment. Like, oh, a traffic jam or so, but then like later I might be like, okay, like I had this thought, like because I was stuck in traffic, I had time
Mm-hmm.
to reflect, or maybe like I listened to a song that like inspired the whole day, like shifted the whole day around,
Right.
like something that I wasn't paying attention to at the time, but like 3 days later I'll look back and be like, oh wow, like like that one Coldplay song. I like listened to Coldplay the whole day. I was super happy after that. Like I'm kind of glad, I was forced
Yeah.
to sit for a moment and just be still. Like so, but we don't really love to be still. Like our culture is
We
so
have to keep going, going, going.
yeah, and there's definitely a balance there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's like what we're like seeking is stillness versus action all the time. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, but that's like all the going in and just listening and like or just like following what's coming up.
Right.
Like if you're really tuning into yourself, you'll know how to respond, like whether it's for action or stillness.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we're coming to the end of this like Mercury retrograde. Like how do you view that? Are you into
I
astrology?
am a little bit. I wish I was more knowledgeable, but all the time.
Right, that you're always learning. Like, so you've
Right.
like really spent time with the tarot,
Mm-hmm.
and like, so I'm just like getting into the astrology. Like, I love how each person I meet has like this focus, and like when we come together, like we can share,
Right.
So, yeah, but like it's, coming to the end,
I'm ready for it.
Right. Normally, I'm not. Like, I've even went through points where I'm like, I'm fine during
Yeah.
retrogrades, but I'm starting to ask the question of, it's not every retrograde, but like the energy that the retrograde sort of happens within.
Right.
So something about it happening within like the Virgo Libra energy like hit me harder,
Mm-hmm.
where like there's other ones that sometimes I feel like I benefit during
Right. No,
retrogrades.
completely get that.
But this time I felt like it was almost across the board. Like everyone I know, people that don't practice anything, like
Mm-hmm.
that don't even believe in it, will be like, oh, my computer, crashed finally after 10 years of you thinking it was going to happen. Or, like all this, lots of technical
Mm-hmm.
stuff this time. So,
Most definitely.
yeah. So, yeah. All right. So, when you practice, do you practice like with a coven, or do you do it mostly on your own? Or,
Normally, I do it on my own. I do have a few friends who practice similar things to me, so we'll get together, do a ritual, do a spell, or just sit and talk about it. But most of the time, it's alone.
right. Yeah. I like the group energy for many things. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I go to yoga, I do, or I used to, I haven't went in a while, like Kundalini yoga. And like at the end, we would have tea. I always brought tea. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's kind of my thing. And we'd have snacks. And like that was sort of we did all of the things together, and then we would sit together. And it
Yeah.
was so nice to be a part of the group. But like it's totally a different vibe when I'm doing it alone.
Right.
So it's like I'm way more focused on the internal and not so much of like what we're doing as a group. But here's those like the Bible coming back out, like when two or more gather. Like I think of that all the
Right.
time. It's like when two or more people gather, it's just the energy around and like
Mm-hmm.
you know
And sometimes you need that added energy or someone else's perspective in whatever you're doing.
right. Or like I think of like the Care Bears, like
Mm-hmm.
Care Bears stay. Like when you're all directing
Mm-hmm.
your light, how
Right.
one thing it becomes more potent.
Mm-hmm.
So
Most definitely.
okay, let's see. Do you use any like magical tools or things that help you like channel energy?
Yeah. So like the obvious is like selenite. I have a little selenite wand that I keep on my altar space,
Mm-hmm.
but also like an athame, a ritual knife. You can
Okay.
use that through like mine's Damascus steel. One of my friends from work actually gave it to me, but I've been using it because I feel like it directs my energy
Mm-hmm.
for certain things.
Right.
But also I use a lot of herbal magic. I mean, I
Okay.
do work at like a tea shop, but
Right, right.
outside of that, using herbal magic, whether it be the purpose medicinal wise
Uh-huh.
or magical.
Right.
But then obviously crystals. I love crystals.
Yeah.
um, Fire again. I feel like fire is a tool you can kind of work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like cards, divination, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, you pulled a card earlier. I was like, I guess, is it a sword
Hmm.
in there? Okay, it kind of looked more like a smaller
Yeah, like a little
knife,
dagger.
but like it was pointed a certain way. So when you said like to direct, like it really did make me like kind of look to the
Hmm.
future because it was sort of in that position. So it's not always for cutting, but like as
Right.
a like look at that way,
You can
you
even
know?
view it as like cutting down the obstacles in your path to get to
Right.
the future.
Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, I love like the symbology and all of this. Like I get all caught up in like studying
Same.
symbolism. Like that's probably my favorite of everything is, and that's where I can find the like the universal truth
Hmm.
is because I study symbolism. And so like when I read the Bible or like when I study, like some Indian texts or, like Buddha, like I can see like the symbolism in it all. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of like the same story, like
Hmm.
it's just different like main characters and like so they're
Right.
gonna tell it a little differently like but I don't know like the stuff is similar, like
Right.
the background
It's
stuff.
reoccurring in so many religions across the world. It's
Right.
like there's validity in there because it is reoccurring so much.
Right, so there has to be something,
Hmm.
like I think of people like the tribal stuff where you have people in like South America and then you go to like Asia and you look at the timelines and you're like, how are they like basically both drawing like dragons
Right.
and like how is that? If there wasn't something, like really interconnecting us all, like how
Right.
are we all seeing dragons at the same time in different parts of the world? We've never communicated. I mean, what are we drawing? Like, where's that
And
energy
like
coming from?
even in like Hinduism and Christianity, there was still like a Jesus figure, air quotes around that,
Right.
where there was upset person who was kind
Mm-hmm.
of spreading the message of their gospel.
Right. Yeah, the Krishna story is so close to the Jesus story.
Right.
And that, like, in my mind, I almost like group them together, which is like,
Right.
I mean, it's silly. They're totally different, right? But, like, I don't know. I feel like I'm just like watching a different, like when Disney like redoes The Lion King and then
Hmm.
like they're making it, with these different
Right.
characters, but it's the same core belief. Like when I think about some of the Christian stories and then I study like Jesus, like especially their childhood is like
Hmm.
sort of like coming into their
Right.
magic, and they're like starting to realize their journey, and like I don't know, it's just there's definitely some overlap,
Hmm.
So I feel like the zeitgeist really. Have you ever seen that?
I feel like I have.
It was pretty big like 10 years ago. But I remember watching it and it just was like this huge whoa, like everything I'd kind of thought,
Hmm.
like but they're using it like very specifically like pinpointing down the similarities and
Hmm.
like the stars at these different births and like the magi or like showing like the three stars that were ushered
Hmm.
in, So it really helped me think about things that way. I mean, it has a lot of like conspiracy
Hmm.
theories within it, but like if you just focus on, like how many times like the story was told of like this immaculate conception
Hmm.
and like the three things brought to this baby. I don't know. It's like it's a universal
Right. Like it
story,
comes back up over and over again in different places.
right? So it's like maybe God incarnates in these different forms, so
Hmm.
that not just one group of people get the message. Like why that kind of always seemed odd to me, like for this belief that God would only bless like white people or
Right.
or just like one group and then like that group's supposed to convert the whole world. I'm like, I
Right.
think in my mind like the being we call God would want to manifest a little bit or show like up in some way to everybody,
Hmm.
because like it's like this universal love, like they say, oh, God loves you like a parent or something, like you're not just going to be like shunning. I
Right.
mean, I
Why
guess
wouldn't they want that for everybody?
exactly, but like they might interpret, what they're seeing differently. So it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a different story. So, all right. How has magic like changed your life? So, from when you first sort of started practicing to now, like how have you evolved?
So like I feel like I kind of always knew I was supposed to be practicing something of the sorts, even when I was little,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be through like media or books or whatever. I always had that view of like I want to be a witch. I want to practice magic just because it
Right.
felt right.
Uh-huh.
And then once I started like stepping into who I was as like a young adult, I'm 21 now, so I'm not too old or anything, but I feel like it's really shaped that I view the world in a magical way. Like
Uh-huh.
I see things in the trees, I feel things, I pick on people's energy. It's just my everyday.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes life a little bit more fun.
Right, right. I would never guess that you were 21. You're so like wise. I feel like when I was 21, I was not like as advanced. Like I guess I was dabbling in
Hmm.
things.
And it's
But
all a process. Like everyone's
right,
on their own path, stepping into their
right,
own power in their own way.
right. And I feel like, reincarnation kind of comes into play. Like some
Hmm.
of us are, if you look at their charts, like you can see some of us came in with certain things that other people don't have, and they like sort of accumulate them throughout the journey, where like some people are born and they already have, it's kind of like a video game, right?
Right.
Like, like you can die, but as long as you got past a certain level, like you keep all of your resources or whatever you just
Right.
like collected, and that I kind of look at all of it like a video game at the end of the day. Like it helps me visualize
Hmm.
the story of it, behind it all. Um, so what are like some of the common things that people come to you for?
Tarot readings for one, because I set up every week at Hummingbird.
Mm-hmm.
But then also I have a few people who I've made spells for, and they keep coming back asking for different ones. The most common one would be like a dream spell. People
Mm-hmm.
with nightmares, I'll make something, put it in their
Okay.
pillow next to their bed, burn a candle, put like a little evil eye above their bed, something like that, and they'll say it stops.
Right.
So I'll have people come and be like, oh, someone told me about this. Can you make me one too? And I'm like, hell yeah. Like, this is
Right.
fun.
Right.
But then also sometimes, like, all three of my jobs are kind of to be a therapist. I'm in hair school, I read tarot, I work at a bar.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of giving people guidance and clarity when they can't see it for themselves.
Right. Okay. What would you say is the biggest misconception that our society holds in regards to witchcraft?
That we worship the devil.
Right? Like,
Because I don't fully even believe in a devil in like the biblical
exactly.
sense. I
Right.
think negative energy and positive are one and the same. It's just interpreted by different people, and people's intentions affect it.
Right.
And like, I don't worship the devil. I don't fully believe in like the Christian God. I believe there is a higher power.
Exactly.
I believe there's something guiding all of us, whether
Right.
it's one set deity or multiple, or
Mm-hmm.
our own higher selves. You
Right.
know, it's like, but also like that we sacrifice that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'm a vegetarian.
Right.
I
Right.
don't kill bugs.
Right.
I don't kill anything. I want
Mm-hmm.
everyone to feel loved, everything to be loved, and to serve its purpose.
Right. So there's definitely, I mean, there are people like that do worship
Oh, most
Satan,
definitely.
but that is not like, yeah, you could probably be a Satanist and be a witch, but it's not always universally like that's not how
Right.
everyone practices.
And like,
Like,
even from studying like Satanism and Luciferianism, I can't pronounce that word, but like, they don't even really believe in the devil either.
right,
Because it's like Lucifer, the fallen angel.
right,
And they don't acknowledge, like, they acknowledge the Christian God,
mm-hmm,
but they don't acknowledge in a way of like having this overwhelming power and this overwhelming evil.
right. I feel like I watched a lot of stuff on like Aleister Crowley, which I'm not advocating him at all,
Same.
but I like to study all the perspectives.
Right.
But really, to me, like he was very focused on like the self. So like
Hmm.
to me, when I think of like Lucifer, it's like the separation from duality to be like fully in the self.
Hmm.
So you might make like very selfish choices. It might end up making you kind of seem evil,
Hmm.
even to
Right.
others, because most of us are like thinking about like the community and all
Hmm.
that, but like like if you're all into the self, like maybe you're disconnected from that,
And it is important to be aware of yourself and do things for yourself, but finding the balance of helping yourself so you can better help others.
Right, right. It's for most of us it comes
Hmm.
back to sharing.
Right.
Like we do self-care and we work on ourselves so that we can go out into the world and
Exactly.
like kind of give our like blessing, like it's
Hmm.
like when you do that work, like you really do like set this example and like people can see it. And I think, you know, just by existing, you know, I've done some past life stuff. I did the Akashic record reading, and you know, of course we're all gonna be like, what's my purpose? Like, what am I here for? And she's like, you're here to just be yourself. And just by existing, like your energy goes out. And so I really do kind of think about it like when I'm at the store, you know, like I'm walking around, I'm smiling. Sometimes I'm not smiling, you know, but either way, I'm affecting
Right.
the people that I'm coming in contact with, even if I don't talk to them, you know. So I feel like that's kind of, I don't know, like part of my spiritual path is like the like recognition of how I'm influencing those around me, whether it's in a good or a negative kind of way. So yeah. I feel like we're kind of coming to the end. Let's see at the time. So could you take a few minutes to talk about the fair that you just did and some of the future things that you have going on?
So I just worked at the Of the Werewolves Festival. It was up in Winfield, Tennessee. A girl I work with works for Nocturnal Entertainment, so they threw that. I got to vend there, so I had tarot, some crystals, some spells, that kind of stuff. Hummingbird was also there, so it was nice to have my little family.
Right.
I'm hoping in the future, because I just started offering my services for like virtual readings, if people aren't comfortable with in person, or doing like parties and events. I've worked a few birthday parties for people, which are a lot of fun. Because like it's a bunch of like big groups of women who just want to hear each other's readings.
Right.
Which is a lot of fun. I would like to expand maybe later down the road, not anytime soon, about teaching others how to use tarot, since I do it in a different way than a lot of people.
Right.
Teach them to like trust their intuition and their energy for it, that you don't have to do it by a set way or a set book.
Right.
But there's validity in that. I know people who read amazing readings just from the Rider-Waite book and the deck.
Right.
It doesn't work for me, you know?
Right. And I mean, if you like force yourself, like you could probably find truth doing
and like
it that
it
way,
worked when I was doing it that way, but it wasn't like as raw, I guess.
Exactly.
It was like, oh, here's your past, present, future. That's great. But now I'm like, well, here's what got you to there.
Right.
You know?
Right. I feel like the big thing is just sort of focusing on like the difference between like a sword and a coin and or a pentacle. You know, like that just the energy of like those four things. I think that's like good to sort of.
Oh, it definitely is. And then like astrology comes into play with tarot too.
Right.
Which I'm not super well versed on, but like I want to learn.
It is all interconnected. Like Shanti yesterday attributed all of the planets in astrology to the chakras, and of course it makes sense, but I had never thought about it that way, and it really blew my mind a little bit, you know, because like she's like Mercury in the throat. I'm like, of course Mercury would be in the throat, like communication. Yeah, but I love when it like all starts overlapping and it's like, but then it's like all this validity because it's like going to come to you in these different forms. So yeah. All right. And you're at the Hummingbird. Is it a certain day of the week that you do those?
It's every Thursday from 5 to 10. So I set up a little altar space, candles, crystals. I'm going to start bringing some little like do-it-yourself spells for people to do. So it's like I already mix the herbs. I write instructions. I write a little spell for them to say and what to do. And they like light the candle. They focus their intentions on it so they can use it to best suit themselves.
Right.
Because I feel like I could just sell them something and be like, oh, this will do this. But like I want them to experience it for themselves.
Right.
And to make it work for their situation, because I don't know their situation.
Right. So you just have like all the resources and then you just customize it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's good because I feel like everyone kind of needs
a little something different.
Yeah. So are the candles like there's like different colors or so like different thing, like the colors represent different outcomes, I guess.
Okay. Or different energies that they want to focus on. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. I love it. I love it. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for being on here. I just love meeting you in person. And
same.
I feel like I've known you forever, which is
same.
always weird to me, you know, like when I like meet those people because it is so rare for me to meet someone like out in the wild that I connect with. So like when I do, I'm like, oh, we've known each other forever. Like I love this person. So, all right. Well, thank you for being on the show. And thank you all for listening. Make sure to join us next week on the Astral Hour. Talk to you soon.